Now, speakers, we speak. And sometimes in between the speaking, we might stop and actually listen. This part's about listening. What can professional speakers learn from consultants in terms of their mindset and practices? As the co-founder of the Flame Center, a talent development practice based in Asia, our next speaker has taught consulting skills to HR, project managers, IT and R&D experts for the past 15 years. Her company is an affiliate partner of Peter Block's Flawless Consulting, which has been voted as one of the most influential books for the past 40 years by Organization Development Network in the US. She has also consulted with companies to create their desired future and to develop, engage, and retain their talents. Their work has recently won the HRO Today Thought Leadership and Innov Plus Spark Award. Her book, Wholeness in a Disruptive World, Pearls of Wisdom from East and West, has been put on the list of recommended reading for the Organizational Change Masters Program in the US. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please give a warm welcome for CSP Wendy Tan.
So, the listening speaker. Is this a paradox? When we speak, does that mean we don't listen? I'm going to answer this question in today's presentation. My background is in organization development and psychology. So in my past life, I used to work as an assessor in assessment centers. So we create these challenging simulations for the managers to assess their potential. And for 2 days, I would just watch without saying a single word. I love doing that. I love to watch, just watch, and make judgments. And I get paid for doing that. And 6 years ago, a near-death experience led me to see time differently. So I want to have more impact in a short time. So I developed myself as a speaker. Now, as a speaker, as we all know, during the engagement time, we speak for 95% of the time. This time, I'm being watched and judged, and sometimes get paid. Yes, and so I speak about wholeness, how to be, think, and act whole in today's disruptive times. And I learned how to structure my keynote. I learned how to tell stories. I learned how to leapfrog through this whole sense of everybody looking at me. I learned how to connect at an emotional level, to use humor, to use my voice. But today I'm not going to talk about all of that because we have other experts, other masters in the room to teach us that. Instead, I'm going to wear my consulting hat. I'm going to talk about how we can leverage this consulting mindset and practices so that we can be truly professional speakers, so that we can really get to that purpose that we want to create in our work. So what do I mean by consulting? Consulting is partnering with your client. It is to help them solve a problem, achieve their objectives, and it's also to be involved in the implementation so that by the time you exit, there is a sustainable way. They can carry it forward by themselves. And by consulting, I don't mean telling them what to do, right? More like just guiding them through a process to find their own solution. So what about speakers? Let's look at 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, husband and wife walks into the restaurant, right? And so husband says, I want wine. And the waiter says, certainly, sir. White or red? White, please. Certainly, sir. Do you want house wine or Chardonnay? House wine. So the customer gets his wine, enjoys it, transaction complete. It's a little bit like speakers, right? Where the customer will say, I want your speech. And then the speaker will ask, certainly, what topic, how long, how many people, how much? We ask these questions, we do the speech, and then we leave. It's a bit like a one-night stand, right? You do it, enjoy the standing ovation, and leave. Why are you all laughing? Huh? So, in this case, the speaker is an order taker, right? That's one way of doing it. Okay, let's look at another scenario. So, this is what happened with my speaker friend. He got an email and was booked to speak at a speech 2 days later in Malaysia. The speaker brief was 4 lines: the industry background, the conference theme, the topic, and duration. That's it. Right, so when we do that, we jump straight from just contracting, meeting out to talking with the client, jump straight to implementation to do the speech. Let's consider another scenario. Same situation, husband and wife walks into the restaurant, right? And the husband says, I want wine. And then the waiter will say, oh, try this 2010 palmy roll, medium bodied, round, focused on the dark cherries, cocoa, and spice box notes. Very rare, very exquisite. Then the customer looks a bit suspicious. And the waiter continues to say, oh, I'm sure your wife will like it. Everybody in the restaurant has liked it. No problem. Guaranteed success. And so, that's the expert way of doing it, right? Where we make recommendations. And I know that this, of course, does not happen to the speakers here, right? It's the speakers outside the room. Yeah, but as speakers, because we have all of these experience, we have done the speeches maybe 1,000 times, right? And we know what works, what doesn't work. And so we advocate to the client, right? We are the experts. But when we do that, we also jump from contracting straight to implementation. Now let's consider the third scenario. The third scenario is same. Husband and wife walks into the restaurant. Husband says, I want wine. And the sommelier, the wine waiter said, Sir, looks like you're celebrating an important occasion. May I know, can I ask you a few questions so we can find the right wine for you? Can I know what kind of vintage you like? What body do you like? And the customer says, well, we're having sirloin steak tonight. We're celebrating our anniversary. I don't know about vintage. And then the waiter says, Sir, I know you usually, you come here quite often, you usually like white wine, but perhaps for tonight, since it's a special occasion, and you're having sirloin steak, why not try medium red, medium-bodied red, right? Merlot will bring out the flavor, and it's also good for the heart. So the waiter notices that the customer is a little bit on the heavy side. And so the customer smiles. Right, so that's the partner way of working with our clients. What did the waiter do in this situation? Contracting, when we say contract, it's not what Ron mentioned earlier, the legal contract. When we talk about contracting, it's really just having an agreement with the client on how do we work together, right? And then we understand what are their needs, what are their pain points, what are their issues, right? The real picture. And then we give feedback. So in this case, the waiter gave feedback, a recommendation on what's the right wine for him. So what consultants do is to contract, discover, and give feedback before we implement any solution. Right? So you probably know this, and some of you might be thinking, I I've done this speech 1,000 times. I know exactly when they will laugh. Or, I'm not paid to do all this. You know, it's only a 1-hour speech. Right? So, you know, the truth is, clients don't ask consultants to do all this discovery as well. Clients are like this, you know, this person holding the gun, pointing at you and saying, I want you to do it now, do it well, and do it cheaply. And since we have an international audience here, I thought I'd just add a little bit of local flavor. The words, the lingo that we use in Singapore is IPIT, which means you want it cheap, you want it done well. Right, but as good consultants, you would know that if you were to just jump in as a pair of hands and do whatever they ask you to do, or as the expert, then the risk is very high. The risk of implementation is very high. So this is what, I did a survey on the Facebook pages of APSS, GSF, as well as GS, Global Speakers Federation. Right, and this is, so about 62 speakers responded. So those of you who took 2 minutes to do this, thank you. Yeah, and what it shows is that only 1/3 of the speakers who responded spend more than 2 hours with our clients before we do our speech. Only 1/3. Right? And it also shows that the more experienced speakers, these global speaking fellows, CSPs as well as PMs, they would spend more time. And the less experienced speakers spend very little time, less than 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours. We also found in this poll that speakers with consulting backgrounds would spend more time with their clients. So you might ask me, what's the benefit of doing all of this? I was asked by this HR director. Right? The HR director said, Wendy, I've seen you done this speech on career conversations, and I know exactly what our people need. Right? They need to have career conversations. I want you to do this speech. Well, so I can just do it and leave. I mean the speech, not anything else, okay? Or I can be the expert, right? That expert and just dish out all these solutions. After all, we did win the Thought Leadership Award in this area of work. Well, but I asked this client, this HR director, so I'm curious. Can you tell me more about your situation? Can I talk to your managing director? Can I talk to a few managers? Right, so that we can be more specific, more targeted when we do the speech. Right, first, she was a bit reluctant. She basically, she looked a bit like in a huff and a puff. Said, just do it. Don't need to be so troublesome. I remember when I was younger. Now I'm still young in my career. That I didn't want to be troublesome. I just want to do the work and do it well and quickly. I was a really good order taker. And then I realized that limited my impact and my contribution. So I decided that it's worthwhile being troublesome, even if our clients don't ask us to do it or resist us doing it. But we still want to put our what we want out, right? So from that one speech, it became a 1-year engagement, including train the trainer. So now they're able to sustain this development culture within the organization. Last November, they did a survey. 96% of the managers now do these career conversations, and about 86% of the employees say that it's useful. So for me, that is something very meaningful because it tells me that the time spent is worth it. Right? So the benefits would be, 1, we get our keynote much more targeted, much more specific, and 2, we can work more with the client, and of course, we earn more. Right? The revenue from this is 9 times more of that one speech. Oh, thank you. Yeah, but some of you might think, my business model is not like this. I only do keynotes. Let's look at this man. So Emma mentioned him just now. He is Jason Lemmings, and he spoke about purpose. So he asked 20 HR heads, entrepreneurs, business leaders. He spoke to 20 people before he did his keynote. How many hours is that? Many hours, right? At least 15 hours, 20 hours. And what was so impressive is the way he engaged people. He actually listed down, he had 2 PowerPoint slides on what you told me. Right? So he fed the data back to his audience. And that, really, he's the only speaker that got C-suite to stand up and say that I will be a steward. It's like, that's really powerful, inspiring people to be stewards. So even if your model is just doing keynotes, that still applies. So how do you do that exactly? So number 1 is to shift from a transactional role to a partnership role. The client may just want you to do once off, but you would still ask yourself, who is responsible for creating this? Who is responsible for managing the relationship, negotiating the relationship? The client or you? You, right? You are the one responsible for it. So take note, are they using you as an order taker or as a pair or as an expert? Right? You want to shift, you want to renegotiate that relationship and shift it towards partnership by saying what you want in order to do the work. And also then, that brings the client on to be responsible for your success as well, to be committed to this work as well, and to put in the resources needed so that, it's not like if it bombs, it's your fault. Yeah? So to be this 50-50 partnership. The other thing is discovery, to see what's below. So we can think of our speech as the leaves of the onion plant, right? So the leaves are visible, it's what we can see, but what feeds the keynote is what's underneath. What feeds the leaves is what's underneath the onions, right? So then that comes back to discovery. What feeds the keynote is what happens before the keynote itself. So on your handout, you'll see on your table there is a handout. So I've suggested a list of questions to help you get a picture of the client organization, right? So you can take a look at this. And then here's another way of looking at it, at discovery. So take one onion out, slice it into half. So this is what happened. One of my clients, he's a director in China, sales director, and he says, Wendy, our people are not collaborating. We're not hitting the numbers. Can you do a speech to motivate them? And then I asked, so that's the presenting problem. And then I asked, so what are your key account managers doing or not doing that's resulting in this problem? And so the boss says, I am just telling them, I'm just working with each team, making sure that each team is doing what they want, what is needed. Yep. And so that really leads to the client contribution. The client contribution is what the client is doing or not doing that leads to this problem. So in this case, there's a lack of collaboration problem. The sales numbers are missing, right? And what people are doing, what the key account managers is doing, they are just focusing on their own area and just being very stressed about it. And what the client himself is doing is just to manage by the silos, manage each team and not manage across, not bring the team together. So I would know that, the recommendations, whatever speech I have would have a limited impact, right? So I decided I need to give some recommendations to the client. So I told Roger, the client, that, we can do this speech, but we really need to set up the structures after the speech so that people can have some opportunities to collaborate, to share best practices. So again, that's something that led him to smile. So one of the recommendations that I've made, I've interviewed 10 APSS members in preparation of today's presentation. And one of the findings we got is, while we have many really good events, But the structure to support the connection and the learning application in between events are a little bit lacking. So that's why I gave the feedback to Frederick, and together with Kiruba, come up with this idea of a communities of practice, which I'll share with you at the end of my presentation. So that's recommendations, what we can do. So let me ask you, what if we double the time we spend with our clients before the speech? That probably means that we understand the client more, we can contextualize the speech much better, we can also do much better in the speech and then get more bookings. Right? What if we double our value to our clients? So then price becomes less of an issue, right? And they appreciate the value that we give them. And last, what if we double the depth of our relationship with our client? So next time they have a referral, somebody's asking them for a referral, or they have a convention in another part of the organization, they'll think of us. Right? But for me, I think the real impact of this is we can do good work this way. Not just the one-night stand, but a long-term partnership. And all of this does not come from speaking. It comes from listening. Now my presentation is over, and I'm just going to take 1 minute, 30 seconds of your time to share with you this communities of practice idea, because some of you were not at the pre-convention that Kiruba did yesterday. So just 30 seconds. So this idea, this idea came from doing all this research for this presentation. Communities of practice is a group of people where you come together to support each other in your learning, in your application, and to stay connected as well. So these are the suggested COPs, community of practice. You see over there the flip charts. Okay, so the COPs, there are different topics. You are welcome to find a new topic if those listed there are not what you are focusing on. And I would suggest focus on something that you are working on now. Right now. Don't focus on something that, like I want to write a book and I maybe 6 months down the road. Okay, focus on something now. And how many of you teach leadership? Raise your hands. All right, good. So lead, right? Lead. To organize the COP, we need some 1 or 2, 3 person to coordinate this effort. Right? How many of you teach accountability, learning, getting results, productivity? Okay, all of you, good. Right, so support this community, be the members, and that means being accountable to yourself, contributing to that small group, and join if you want to contribute and receive. Right? And this applies to all our guests who are not in APSS, who are not based in Singapore, right? Because we want to stay connected. And these are some suggestions. I think what I'll do is we'll probably try to print it out because I don't want to run through the whole list. But the key thing is, the one action that you want to take is put out your name if that's something that you want. Number 2, then the leads should initiate a WhatsApp group so that we can get the group together. You should sit for lunch. You could sit for lunch together tomorrow on day 2 and organize your efforts. And the last point is predetermine the end date of the COP. So it's like before you get married, you better want to discuss when do we stop getting married. Okay. All right, so at the end of the day, it's the care and the commitment to your own learning, to each other's success that will determine the success of this COP. So I would suggest, please start by contributing first. Thank you.
Thank you very much.